Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Hood Museum of Art, to Sara Shelton's Space for Dialogue talk. And I want to give a special welcome to her parents who have flown in from Texas just for this event. So I'm Neely, and I have the pleasure of working closely with Sara this year. She's a programming intern here at the Hood. She is an art history and econ double major, yay for 2 times. And she graduates this spring and has plans to go to law school in the fall. So with that, I'm not going to take up any more time. We are all so excited to hear from you this afternoon. So welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. All my friends and my family, my improv group, my roommates, everybody. I've had a wonderful time working on this show for the last 3 months as part of my internship. It's been a very quick process, but a very rewarding experience getting to work with the entirety of the Hood staff. And I've been learning a lot through the process as well. I want to thank some people without whom this show could not be possible. Neely, Christy, Amelia, Beth, Randall, Ryan, and everyone else who helped me along the way. Thank you so much for your time and your energy. And a big thank you to my fellow interns who have heard me complain about all the hard work and have to deal with me talking at all of our meetings. For the people who don't know much about the Space for Dialogue process, the first thing we need to do is choose a theme. And the people who know me quite well know that I often try not to take things too seriously. I do improv here at Dartmouth with Casual Thursday. And partially through this show, I've discovered that my life goal of making people laugh seems to extend into my love of art and art history. When trying to find a theme for my Space for Dialogue, I immediately found myself drawn to art that is a little weird, absurd, or satirical. In short, my theme was almost chosen for me already just because of who I am and what I love to do, entertain people. I wanted to create not just an exhibit, but a whole experience for everyone. Art can do a lot of things, but for me, I love the idea of curating a space that made people laugh, interact, and leave my show feeling a little lighter. While I don't think the works in this show take themselves too seriously, they still do important work of affecting the viewer and presenting new worlds for them to interact with. Art can also feel a little daunting and intimidating sometimes, and I think my exhibition might help make it feel a little more approachable and fun for everyone. The difficulty with curating and presenting a show on humorous art, if you haven't gotten that, that's my theme, is that humor is extremely individualistic. What is funny for one person isn't funny for another, and often explaining a joke ruins the joke. One quote that I love from E.B. White is, "Humor can be dissected as a frog can, but the thing dies in the process, and the innards are discouraging to any but the pure scientific mind." So I'll try to explain the works in this show without killing any of the jokes. But truly, the challenge here was finding works that all play with humor differently. Some of the pieces will appeal to some more than others, but for me, that's kind of the interesting game of this exhibition. I really have no idea what people might think or even if people will laugh, but definitely a hope that I have. I am very, very excited to have you all view them upstairs in the gallery and hopefully get a kick out of them. And I'm going to walk you through the works in my show, how they relate, how they're different, and why I think they tell important stories. So, the first work I really wanted to include in my show was A Box of Smile by Yoko Ono, even before I had chosen any theme. This is a 1984 edition of a 1971 work that Ono made as part of the Fluxus movement, which was a mid 20th century avant garde movement that blurred the lines between art and everyday life. The small, unassuming black box was created after her husband, John Lennon, died. She looked in the mirror to push herself into smiling again. It didn't work at first, but over time, she found herself happy. With the box, Yoko Ono wishes to do the same for others. Speaking about its creation, Ono says, "I just wanted to have a box that people can look into, and when they're sad and angry and all of that, to see how it looks smiling." When opened, the box contains a mirror for each viewer to look at themselves inside, becoming its title, A Box of Smile. I was drawn to this piece because I feel like it's a little trick of joy placed kind of at the entrance of my show. I wanted Ono's piece to kind of shock fun and playfulness into the exhibition. I feel like we've all probably been in a place where we're feeling stressed or down. And like Ono herself, I found my direction for the show in the little box. However, people might first enter the gallery, there's some fun awaiting them that they can find by inserting themselves into the works. I find a connection between all these pieces in my show. It's often revealing things and upending expectations. And the next work, which is Sonia Landy Sheridan's Find the Real Sister Electra, asks us to find the real nun hidden within, kind of like a Where's Waldo game that we have all played before. This work on paper is comprised of 24 photo booth strips where Sheridan, who's pictured in the top left, posed alongside her students at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago as they engage in humorous dress up as a nun, where one nun might be yelling, the next is falling asleep, one is even smoking. They're playing a role that feels taboo, and Sheridan and her students do what we all do, play pretend. While the students play a straight edge character and a straight edge character in a scandalous way, there is no sense of cruel mocking, but rather a harmless fun that produces joy. There's also humor in the communal activity of creating this work. You can imagine them laughing while switching in and out of the photo booth, thinking about the final product of all of them put together. We've all dressed up ourselves. It's a classic activity. Maybe you can recall a costume you've worn or a Halloween that you celebrated with all your friends and the excitement of becoming this other person or character. In Sheridan's work, there is no real nun to find, but I do think there is a hilarity in her sending us on a wild goose chase around her work. Another of Sheridan's works in this show, which is catty-cornered to that one in the gallery, is Deviate. It's a print that asks for the audience to explore and interact. It's a puzzle to solve. Written on a typewriter, I was imagining Sheridan sitting down and just painstakingly typing all of these words without making any mistakes. I've only written on a typewriter like twice, but it's really hard. And I'm sure it feels really rhythmic and quite intentional. Similar to Yoko Ono's work, Deviate doesn't tell you a joke and just ask you to laugh, but it asks you to find the irony and satisfaction of having the work explain itself. Sheridan's second work in my show reveals its humor as the viewer finds differences or similarities between what we see and what we read. Once we discover the change, we are in on the joke. Take a second and see if there are any actual deviations. There are. I think this piece is a little cheeky, a little playful. It's quite simple, quite self-explanatory, but it does exactly what it says it will. The next piece is hilarious to me. Though you might be confused at first. This is a lithograph by American artist Stephen DeHanos of a mother hen with her egg, all nestled together in their coop. The scene is high contrast, spotlighting the chicken and the egg, creating intense shadow. If anything, the hen looks quite shocked and confused, printed in beautiful black and white line work. And yes, this might just be a print of a chicken and an egg, but it is so much more than that. Given that this is a show about humor, what do we imagine the work to be called? You're so right. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Dehanos plays with his title. I have no idea if he thought of the title first or added it as a tongue-in-cheek afterthought, but I cracked up when I read the title, which contains a logic game we all know well. Whatever our initial expectations might be about the print, the title swoops in and adds a layer of playfulness that really took my attention. Together in my exhibition, I have somewhat of a bird section on the wall. Right below which came first is a photograph from Russian photographer Dmitry Baltermont's. Kind of a coincidence that I have multiple bird pieces, but who doesn't love birds? I'm not complaining. Baltermont's black and white photograph is of 10 white doves sitting above a crowded procession. Baltermont's worked as a photographer of Soviet Union everyday life and a war photographer for over 5 decades. So we can assume that the commotion in the back is possibly some sort of political event. Despite the buzz we can almost hear when viewing the photograph, Baltermont's looks took a second to capture a subtle happenstance scene, titling it, "Did you see the play?" Putting the doves into a playful, mundane conversation with one another. While Baltermont's gained recognition for his war photography, he once said that, quote, "We would like to see photographs about joy, happiness, and love. I like to think about what taking this photo did for Baltermont himself amidst a very difficult job he had to do. And by capturing this scene of everyday Soviet life transformed into a conversation between birds, Baltermonts exposes all of us to a new perspective of finding small moments that can bring us a little chuckle during a lot of other noise. Without doubt, we've all tried to capture and savor moments that might feel maybe a little insignificant during heavier moments, but I think it makes it easier to just have a little fun with it. By anthropomorphizing the birds, everything feels a little less serious and a little lighter. So, continuing with photography, these three photographs are very precious to me. You'll see upstairs they're tiny little things, not much bigger than playing cards, smaller than they are on the screen here. One of them is of a play fight. One is some guys with their head in the sand. Another is a lady kissing a river statue. These are vernacular photographs, a kind of photography that encompasses images not made as fine art, but for everyday functional purposes like personal memories or documentation. Each of these three photographs are posed or staged, a scene that has been constructed and captured to be remembered forever. Not only do I think that these scenes are hilarious, but the entire process of capturing a moment and keeping it in your back pocket or wallet to remember is a very joyful and intimate experience, almost like having an inside joke with someone. We don't know the artist of these images, but it's not difficult to imagine that they were somewhat like us. We use our phones, but we all pose with our friends, take snapshots of hilarious moments, and send inside jokes back and forth to connect and laugh over memories. It makes me smile to remember the moments I had with my friends, you guys, and sometimes I will just find myself scrolling through my photos and laughing about all the photos I've taken. Photography plays a really interesting role with humor because of its ability to capture just a funny happenstance moment. This photograph from Leonard Freed from 1977 is probably one of my favorite works in the show. I remember when I first saw it, I laughed at the hilarity of the moment. While the three previous vernacular photos were staged, this one was stumbled upon. They do different things, but both make me think about how everyday life is just funny and absurd, whether you try to make it so or it just is. In this photograph, all boundaries seem to fade away. On the left, a couple seems to be in a world of their own, embracing, right next to a group of older gentlemen just playing cards, seemingly unbothered. I love to think about what everyone in this photo is thinking. Are the two parties aware of one another? Is there any awkwardness in the air, or is everyone just content with the absurdity of the moment? The two pairs are in a state of utter concentration, and there's something very funny about the supposed obliviousness in the scene. Both activities seem to be both fair game. You can't blame either party. It's just a scene that exists and doesn't apologize for it. I find a lot of humor in the shamelessness of this photograph and the upending of expectations we all have for the separation of life when it's not always possible. Upstairs in the gallery, I have this little card facing another dashing gentleman. I'm pretty sure one of the other interns sent this to me, so thank you very much. But this work is called Grande el Sombrero, or Hat's Too Big. This is a self-portrait from a 2012 print series by Mexican artist Enrique Chagoya. He's referencing a print from Francisco Goya, a famous 18th and 19th century Spanish painter and printmaker. Goya created a series of satirical prints called Los Caprichos in 1797 and 98, the first of which was his self-portrait shown here, where he satirizes himself with an offstandish attitude and the air of an important person. Centuries later, Chagoya's contemporary self-portrait enlarges Goya's hat, turning the focus not to social commentary, but to a humorous reimagination. As far as I can guess, he jokes that he has big shoes, which you can see this little stamp at the bottom has a little foot going into a big shoe, or hat to fill. When I picked this piece for my show, honestly, I knew very little background of the print. I just simply enjoyed the absurdity of the big hat. I was like, that hat is too big. However, having context for this work allows me to see a narrative being written of a contemporary artist pulling his own leg a bit. A couple of the last three works in the show are both objects, which sit in the gallery's central case alongside a box of Smile, the first work I talked about. Upstairs, Ed Ruscha's record sits open to a page showing Carla Thomas and Otis Redding's 1967 album, King and Queen. King and Queen is one of the 30 album covers photographed in records in black and white, while they each the opposing page of each prints the vinyl within the sheets. All of the albums were taken from Ruscha's personal collection, photographed with the help of Jeremy McMillan. I already knew of Ruscha's work a little bit prior to the show, but I really love the sort of futile nature of records. Vinyl albums are of little use if they cannot actually be listened to, and the absurdity here reveals itself as there's little to discover beyond the photographs. You can see the music, but you cannot listen to it. The delivery feels very deadpan, and it always feels like I should turn the page to see some explanation of why the album is shown, but you get none. I'm always imagining if instead of listening to a song that my friend sends me, I just like look at the album cover and I'm like, I wonder what that would sound like. It kind of feels like a little bit of a practical joke. Some of his other photography books include 26 gasoline stations, photos of 26 photos of gasoline stations, and 34 parking lots. Yeah, that's 34 parking lots. But the other object sitting in the case alongside a box of Smile and records is Events by Takahisa Kasugi, a Fluxus artist who worked alongside Yoko Ono, who worked mostly with sound and music. Sitting first is a little plastic box. You can open it up to reveal event cards, which are extremely absurd. Some of them are impossible, but in short, it's a collection of 18 possible performances for viewers to complete or dream of completing. This is a type of art as games in a box introduced in the Fluxus movement, the point of which was to experience the artwork for yourself. The event cards range from reading, quote, pronounce south during a duration of more than 15 minutes. Pause for breath is permitted, but transition from pronunciation of one letter to another should be smooth and slow. To another card reading, put out a hand from a window for a long time. With these with these sound-based events, Kasugi hopes to help people reimagine music as an everyday experience. He also creates an absurdist performance art where humor is born out of the difference between what can be done and what he is asking us to do. I recommend going upstairs and reading a bunch of them that have been laid out for you, and maybe you choose your favorite and try to do it. Maybe I'll be hearing a bunch of people saying South really loud for 15 minutes. The last work in my show is the largest. It is Portfolio by Dorothea Tanning. Like a box of Smile, Tanning's portfolio lithograph is experienced through a reveal. First, take this image of a nice young lady carrying an unwieldy artist portfolio in some weird yellow void. Stored within, one would expect to find drawings or photographs consistent with a blank-faced girl in ballet flats. I always had questions about where she was going, and to be honest, I really like her because she looks like me when I had a bob. Her portfolio physically peels back to reveal what she is hiding. What do you guys think is underneath? You're probably wrong. It's a scene of monsters. Um, this little creature at the bottom seems to be wearing some sort of tuxedo shirt, and her legs are quite splayed open. The girl twists as the three creatures all grab one another. When viewing the first part of the portfolio, our expectations are set for a sort of simplicity and calm. Chaos erupts when the print is physically unveiled, allowing us to actively participate in discovering this absurdist scene that is incongruous with the interior. In the gallery, the portfolio is displayed open, but I would like to have everyone think about the actual action of opening the print. I struggled initially with being able to describe quite why I found this work funny, but humor often happens when something we never believed could be true happens. Here, I always felt like Tanning reveals the fact that everything might have a hidden side of whimsy and wildness, even ourselves. So this work kind of does what I wanted the whole show to do. It reveals humor through art, but in a lot of ways, it allowed me to think about how my favorite moments are often when I encounter something entirely unexpected and I get to laugh about how wrong I was. Um, those are the 11 works that comprise my show, My Space for Dialogue. I'm very excited to hear what your reactions were from seeing these pieces in the talk, and how you experience them upstairs. Hopefully something resonates with you or makes you chuckle. I really believe that this is a show to be experienced alongside other people, so I hope you guys go up to the gallery and actually walk around and get to see the moments of joy and the reveals for yourself. I want to again mention how much help I got from the entire Hood staff during this process, my friends, my parents for coming this long way. Thank you so much for coming this afternoon. And if anyone has any questions, I'd love to answer with you. Yes.
Me?
Yes, you.
Okay, I didn't know. So art is serious business, right? Were you a little worried about taking on humor, and by the way, I'm 100% with you. There's humor all through art,
Mhm.
but it's surprising that there's humor all through art, because art seems like such a serious presentation most of the time. So were you at all daunted by this thought that, uh-oh, am I being like improper?
Yeah.
Looking for humor in art.
I actually, oh yeah, restate the question for the Zoom. Was I ever daunted with the idea of creating a show about art that's funny when art seems serious? During one of the intern meetings we had, we actually presented our ideas to all the other interns. And I had like two separate ideas. One was this idea of like whimsy and fun, and the other were like political satires. Because I think funny art can also like does something really important. So while I think it was I was worried about coming off like I didn't really care about what the art was doing, and I still feel like it does something important, but I leaned have more on the side of it being joyful and playful rather than like satire, because I felt like that's what I would want to experience from a show I went to, instead of it necessarily feeling like it had to teach me something at this moment in my life. Any other questions? Yes, Leah.
What is it about birds that you think makes them so funny and such good subject for what constituted two of your few works that you did?
That's a great question. For me, it was kind of a coincidence, but I think it's maybe just the fact that there's so many birds and they're kind of everywhere. I don't know right now. I was just thinking about birds aren't real, the thing. You guys know birds aren't real. I'm seeing a few nods. Maybe just the fact that they're everywhere. And I feel like most of the time I kind of think as birds as like being a little dumb. But maybe they're really smart. Like parrots can talk. Yes, Lauren.
Did you have any pieces that you saw and you thought were funny at first glance? But then when you actually looked into it, you couldn't really find the background to like support putting it in the show? Or like, was it more like if something looked funny to you, like, you know, it's subjective, like if you think it's funny, you can know the show.
Yeah, there's one piece in the Hoods collection. It's like a trio of images, and one of them is like a hot dog with women's legs. And when I saw that, I was like, that's perfect for the show. I like think that's hilarious. It's just a hot dog with legs. But then I looked into the work a little more, and it's kind of about the objectification of female bodies. And so I was like, I can't put that in the show because it might look really funny, but it's actually taking on something very serious, which I think some of these do too. But that was kind of like the other route of the show that I was thinking about taking that I didn't. And I kind of wanted all of the pieces in the show to have more of a similar narrative than just looking funny. That makes sense. Yeah. Yes, you, sir.
I'm curious, you mentioned the chicken and the egg as a plot item. I was wondering if you discovered any logic within the jokes, or if there was any like explanation beyond that.
Beyond the which came first one in particular, or?
If you maybe discovered that there was a logic to what gives you humor, or how you find something funny.
Yeah, that's a great question. How do we know, like, if it was logical that these things are funny? I think one of the things that I struggled with when doing all of my writing for the show was like having to explain to people why things are funny, because there's a lot of different theory. I like did a lot of research. I watched a few TED Talks about like why things are funny and like the psychological theories, and basically it all kind of boils more or less down to like what you think versus what is, and the sort of like difference between those two. It's more complicated than that. But I think that like most all of these include some element of that, of um, they are funny maybe just because the artists were doing something playful, but they're also funny because of how humor works. It can't be like too offensive, and it can't be too corny sometimes. So I do think that they all, in some ways, they're quite logical, but I was trying not to explain too much psychological, because that's not my strength. Yes, Neely.
It's not a question, but I think you used the word reveal in your
when you're talking about the tanning. And I think there's quality of reveal that's interesting to you. You see something and then you get closer, you spend time with it, and then it reveals its humor to you. I don't know if that's the case or if that's just as your manager something that I saw.
I mean, I think that's part of the difference between what is and what you think, because you think one thing and then your mind changes. And I think the reveal is part of that. It's like a card that you like open and then it pops up. It's more fun that way. Any other questions? Yes.
My favorite things that you did was the hat. Sure. And I'm just wondering on how you discovered the process of finding the origin photo or the origin print and how that works for non-art history.
Yeah. For this one in particular, I'm pretty sure so we have like archives here that the interns were allowed to go look at pieces, a bunch of pieces beyond the ones that I'm actually having in my show. And so I got to go into the file of this and look at the information of it and why it was acquired and some of the background. So that's probably where I got some of it, but also probably Google. I think the artist writes it. This is a series of works that we have that are all based off of the Goya print. So there's a good amount of background, even just online, about the artist speaking about it himself, which is very helpful for me. Yes, Janani.
First of all, amazing concert, Sarah. Can you talk to us about like subjectivity and humor and how you were curating how the audience would react to this, or who is this funny to, and who is the audience?
Yeah, I think that was my biggest worry and nervous point of the show was I've been spending like 3 months on these, so I know them really well, and I still look at them and laugh a lot of the times when I see them, but I am sure that some of these that I showed today, some people just thought they were really not funny at all. But I hope that I'm like, hopefully if I find something funny enough to want to show it to people, at least one person will want to see it and like it. And I feel like one person was enough for me. So that worked. Yeah, Elsa.
Did you find that there was like a specific decade that ended was funny? I feel like you know a lot from like the 70s and 80s.
Because I really fell in love with the Fluxus movement during this show. We had a show I wasn't here. They had a show at the Hood within the past like 10 or 15 years about the Fluxus movement. And it's just all quite like the events with the little cards are part of that in the Yoko Ono box. And there was like probably 10 other pieces in the collection that I kind of wanted to use, but I had to limit. But so maybe the fact that movement in particular was during the 60s and 70s is why I love it. Yeah, Laura.
This question more about the actual works that you have, a few pieces that like you actually like as a piece of music, to interact with like the smile box opening it and like seeing the mirror, or like the box with all the little like fun adventures or something, and then the last one where you would flip down and also reveal the birds. Like, how do you think as like a regular patron of the museum, like you wouldn't really be able to touch the artwork and interact with it? How do you think that has changed, like maybe the experience of finding fun?
That's such a good question, because part of the process for the Space for Dialogue was I got to like choose the matting for the photos and the framing and if I wanted objects or anything. And part of the process was how I wanted the objects or like the portfolio presented, which I got a lot of help from like Christy and the whole team that does like all the mounts and cases. And some of them, like the little box, it's open right now in the galleries because it kind of has to be to see the mirror, but it has to be like open at a certain angle because it's really fragile. The events I actually went through the other morning and like chose my favorite. And some of them are backwards because there's like cool prints on the back. But half of it was like things I could decide and the way I thought would be best for people not being able to touch anything. And then part of it was like the constraints of the museum and what we had in the process. So it was a fun mixture. Any other questions? Okay. Oh, mom.
So you got to work from this museum, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that isn't here that you love somewhere else that you've seen that you would have wanted to include?
That's a great question. For funny art, I think there's a lot of really funny surrealist art that I've seen in other museums that I think would have been like I really wanted to include a Moreau in my show because I really like Moreau. And he does like a lot of like dream-like scenes that I think are quite funny. But I think we have a few here, but none of them were really funny. So maybe one of those. Okay. Thank you.